If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may. Welcome to another episode of the School Without Walls. I am Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational initiative. My guest today is Miss Joyce Bracy Vaughan, the staff person here at the University of Arkansas. She's the Director of Student Counseling Assessment and Development of the Student Counseling Assessment and Development Center here at the University of Arkansas. And she will probably be serving sometime in the future as my co-director in my absence. She's so fluent with this. We are going to talk with you today about the month of February being set aside for Black History Month. Keep in mind that Dr. Carter G. Woodson in the 30s, in 1930, I don't remember the exact date, established this observation, but it was only 1 week, right?
Right.
Now we have made progress from 1 week to 4.
A full month.
A full month. So the question on the floor right now, Miss Vaughan, is why do you think Dr. Carter G. Woodson labored to get national attention to Black history?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me as your guest. And my response to that would simply be that during the era that Dr. Carter G. Woodson was being so adamant about sharing, at that time, Negro history, it was unheard of to have a history of people of color in public schools or in any other avenue of helping to educate the masses about people of African descent. So Carter G. Woodson was determined to get that education out, and he was very successful in establishing a Negro History Week. And later in the 20th century, late 20th century, we were able to establish the Black History Month celebration. Black History Month celebration. And as a part of my history, during the time that Black History Month was established, I was working at the Ohio State University, and I was able to take on a position in an office called this Office of African American Student Services. And the services were designed specifically to address support needs of students of African descent. So everything from academic tutoring to cultural programs, that was done. And for several years, I was able to coordinate the what we call United Black World Month celebration at the Ohio State University. So that became an event that I looked forward to while I was in that particular position. So as we celebrate each year, I am the first to say that Black History Month is simply the appetizer for the full meal that we should be having 365 days of the year.
Definitely so. And I've advocated the same thing over decades, and I realize it takes more time to get this in the public school system. But I've tried to get our pastors of the African American churches to understand the need of utilizing their educational building in this endeavor. Because you can find people capable if you show the leadership. So pastors, take a tip from that, and hopefully that in the very near future you will have someone continually talking about the history of the African American experience, because if one does not know one's history, one does not know who he is. If one does not know who he is, then he can't be respected by people who know who they are. So this is what this is all about, basically, Generally in my programs, I try to explain to the community basically what I'm all about. I'm about trying to do the little bit that I can to encourage leaders in the African American community to do all that they can to lift the educational, economic, and social standards of my people,
Yes.
and especially the youth, especially
very
the
much
male youth. I visited the prison, I guess you said the center, what do you call it, not the prison, that might have been
Juvenile detention
juvenile
center.
detention center. 98% of the young men down there were African American.
Yes.
Something is wrong with that.
Yes. Yes.
That means that somebody has neglected them. Not just a bunch of bad kids born, right?
Right.
Grew up
right.
one day and said, I'm going to be a prison.
Yeah.
There's something is wrong, so we have so much we can do in the community. All right, back to...
and just to add to that, Dr. Hobbs, one of the things that is most important that you said is that if you do not know your history, then you do not know your worth.
You don't.
And not only the African American male, but the African American female, we have challenges throughout our communities to help our students and our young people, children, youth, and young adults, have more stronger self-concepts.
Right.
And a part of that is recognizing this celebration we have this month. And that's why I make the statement that this is only an appetizer for the churches and communities that sponsor programs and try to put everything into 28 days. Know that you have 365 days to help students develop stronger self-concepts by helping them to understand their history, helping them to understand that there are persons out there to celebrate who are African Americans other than Martin Luther King Jr., other than Malcolm X, and other than the hip-hop generations.
That is so true.
All of the performers and the entertainers and the athletes. There are so many other people. And one of the charges that I would give to our communities, whether they be churches or community groups, is help students understand, help your membership understand the heroes and sheroes that are within your local environment.
Right, and we're going to do that on our next program.
Yes, we are.
Let's stop on that note for break, and we'll be right back.
Wake the sun, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
NFC, AFC, offensive linemen, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, and cornerbacks are all working with United Way for a million little reasons. The kids of our communities, to ensure their academic success all the way to graduation day. You see, it takes about 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a kid becoming one or the other could be a professional athlete, or it could be you. Studies showed the earlier we get to kids, the better their chances. So become a United Way volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor, and make a difference in the life of a child, for the life of that child.
Give. Advocate.
Volunteer. Live United. Join your favorite NFL players. Take the pledge. Go to unitedway.org.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program called The School Without Walls. My guest is that dynamic staff person here at the University of Arkansas, and my friend, Miss Joyce Bracy Vaughan. Miss Vaughan, we were just before the break, we were talking about how I believe the week was extended to a month, right?
Yes.
And you said that you were in on something that was quite rich experience for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was a very good experience, and I'm excited because every time I have the opportunity to stand before a group or interact with any group to talk about our heritage, that just sparks an extra energy. The Mary McLeod Bethunes of our day, you know, the Richard Allens of our day, the Rosa Parks of our day, and as we're celebrating Black History, we need to recognize that on Monday, the 4th of February, there was an unveiling of Mother Rosa Parks' U.S. postal stamp, and we are excited about that.
Just briefly give the public a little of the basic history of Mrs. Parks. Who was she?
Oh, Rosa Parks, we call her Mother Rosa Parks, and I do so personally because Mother Rosa Parks was a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Right, that's our denomination.
That's our denomination, and the oldest institution, African-American institution in this country.
Right.
And she was a shero of her own kind, but she is best known as the mother of the civil rights movement because in 1955 she refused to give her seat up on a bus in Alabama to a white person because she was just tired and she didn't feel like getting up out of a segregated seat. So that was the impetus for the civil rights movement, and the rest is history with the incoming of then the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who, along with Mother Rosa Parks, gave us an entire era of civil rights history.
Right. In other words, prior to, during that period, African Americans were not permitted to sit on the front of the buses and trains and things of that nature.
Yes,
right?
that's right. And Mother Rosa Parks simply refused to get up when she was addressed by the bus driver. And of course, we know that history reports to us that she was arrested, and it was not just that particular situation because her earlier advocacies are downplayed. They feel
right.
it's in history.
For quite some time, right?
Yeah, what we remember and what we see in the television programs and everything is that she became famous as a result of that. But she had been the secretary, if I'm not mistaken, of the local NAACP right there in her time. That's right.
For a number of years, she had advocated the liberation of the blacks in the community.
Right.
I am fortunate enough, I should say, that I lived through that era. You got a little bit of it too.
Just a tiny bit, yes.
Yeah, I lived through that era where African Americans had to sit on the back of the bus and.
At the time at the time that particular protest started, I was 2 years old. I was born in 1953. Yes.
Let me ask you this question: you have a deep interest, as you have expressed, in the history being taught, and what happened in your life years back that you think inspired you to think contrary to many of our people? Many of our people today that I've talked with don't have any sense of the need of knowing their own history. What happened in your life?
Well, number one, I came from a family that taught me that I was as special as anyone walking. I was reared my first 9 years by grandparents, and my grandfather happened to have been a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and my grandmother was a strong missionary. She was a housewife and a grandmother and a mother, and she was very adamant about you being as special as anyone can be because you're God's child. She didn't have a high school education, but she felt that I needed to have one, and so did my brothers and sisters, my brothers and sister. But the other part of it was I was a part of a very strong church, and the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and I was raised at Greater Ward Chapel, AME Church here in Pine Bluff, and the membership was just very supportive of our children, our youth, our young adults, and they were very supportive of the history of that church. So you knew that you were somebody from day one.
Well, let us segue from this into the history of the corporation. You mentioned earlier that it was the first organization. I want to say to the public, it was not only the first organization, but the first American corporation. because prior to the establishing of the AME Church, the various corporations that existed in America were chartered in Europe. So this is the first American corporation that happens to be really an institution
Yes.
headed by the African American. You want to talk with us about the early history? Are you aware? I'm sure you know Richard Allen was in the United.
Yes,
you want
yes,
to talk
yes.
about that?
Well, yes. Richard Allen, Bishop Richard Allen, who is acknowledged as the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and has a very strong legacy.
And was born a slave.
And was born a slave. And
right?
the one fact that every child in the AME Church learns is that Richard Allen was a God-centered person.
That's right.
He was called into the ministry at a very young age, while he was still a slave.
Right.
And his slave owner was one that was not as aggressive as some.
Right.
And he permitted Richard Allen to purchase he and his brothers freedom for 2,000 continental dollars.
By working after
he finished his regular work. And Richard Allen worked and saved that $2,000, and that's how he bought his freedom.
We have to go to break, and we'll come back and continue with Richard Allen. But before we go to break, I want to say this: that he converted his master to Christianity.
Yes, he did.
Didn't he?
Yes, he did.
That is amazing.
Yes,
we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Millions of people are affected by disaster in America, and we're right there, providing food. With more than 200 food banks, reaching communities all across America. Donate now for immediate relief and long-term recovery. Every dollar helps provide food for disaster victims. Help now at feedingamerica.org.
Seven 7,000 high school students drop out every school day. Let's catch them before it's too late. To start helping students in your community, visit boostup.org.
It's not his new group of friends. It's not the video games. It's not the neighborhood.
Mom, do I have to go to school today?
The biggest threat to your child's future could be you. Every day they miss, even in middle school, puts their graduation at risk.
Hey, my name's Katie and I'm in the 9th grade. I'm an A average student and I'm an athlete working towards a scholarship. And everybody tells me how much potential I have. But I just wish someone would tell me where my next meal is coming from. Katie, how'd I do?
Do you have to be so serious?
Well, I mean, I did like a crazy dance in a movie if you want me to like, you know, do a little, no.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program called The School Without Walls. My guest is Miss Joyce B. Vaughan. Ms. Vaughan, we were talking about the history of the AME Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Yes.
Before you continue, let me point this out to the people because the question has been asked on a number of occasions. Is that church founded in Africa? Why is it African American? And what is it African? Well, no, it was founded by African Americans, but at that time in history, Africans referred to themselves as Africans. The people of Africa, of African origin, did not call themselves Negro or colored or black. They called themselves Africans. And of course, we've kind of done a cycle. We went from African to later on called Negro, and then colored. Now the cycle is coming back to the fact that many of us realize that there's no nation in the world called Negro, There's no nation in the world
black.
called colored or black. So the intellectual thing will be to go back to your origin.
African.
So we'll call African Americans for those who are a little confused.
Yeah.
We have a few that are confused today.
And the other part of that that's so important is that the diaspora, the African diaspora, is throughout the world.
Throughout the world.
Throughout the world.
That's
So
right.
people of African descent have brothers and sisters throughout the world.
Throughout the world. That is so true. And the word diaspora is very important because we have some that don't know what it means, and this is an educational medium, so it means everywhere, other than the original place. Diaspora, everywhere, the original place. All right, continue. He went on and joined, what
Yes, Bishop Richard Allen went on to become a leader, religious leader within the Methodist Episcopal Church, and he attended St. George's. And the history of the African Methodist Episcopal Church is that on one Sunday in the fall, Richard Allen, Absalom Jones, and others walked out of St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church simply because they were pulled from their knees while they were praying. And for that reason, they asked if they could just wait until the prayer was over, but they were pulled from their knees. So as a result, when the prayer was over, they all walked out of that church, and it wasn't like they walked out and then just went and found the blacksmith shop and started a new church. There were years that were between there. They met together and they created an African society, and that society was most impactful during the yellow fever epidemic.
I like to refer to it as a nation. It was a society, but it was like a nation. They came together to self-help, right?
Self-help
Yeah,
organization.
self-help.
And that till this day, even with the origination of the church formally in 1816, self-help has been the thing. One of the things that I love to refer to, because of Kwanzaa being an African-American holiday, and one of the principles of Kwanzaa is Kujichagulia, which is self-determination.
Right.
I tell people all the time when I'm doing Kwanzaa celebrations that you have to know that there was someone before Mr. Karenga, and that was Richard Allen, who helped to develop the self-determination.
That concept.
That concept of self-determination. So the African Methodist Episcopal Church is built on that.
That's
and God is the head of the church, but the self-help focus has been throughout the church.
And through that self-help, about a dozen colleges and schools were
Yes,
established.
yes.
I don't think there's another organization in America that has established that many schools for black people.
And the institution that was my first choice, even though I was a proud graduate, I am a proud graduate of UAPB, my first choice was Wilberforce University, which is the oldest AME university, and depending on who's telling the story, the oldest African-American institution. There's a claim from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania that they have the oldest history. So it depends on who's telling that history as to whether or not.
Both of them are rather close, aren't they?
Both of them are very, very close, and that's a very impactful piece of our history. But the one thing I want everyone to remember is during the month of February, the African Methodist Episcopal Church does celebrate its history, its founding, the second Sunday in February, and that's because Richard Allen's birthday is on February the 14th. And that's the season that we celebrate the history of that church.
We're running out of time, so we only have 3 minutes. So let us talk about events that you know of that are coming up here in the city that folk might look forward to.
There are events throughout the city, and I do not have a total list, but I want to invite persons to a February 27th event here on campus that is being sponsored by a student group, which is the History Club. And they are asking people to please come and join them on February the 27th. I believe the time is 7 p.m. And the title of it is Still, Still I Rise. And you can find any of the any of the celebrations for February at UAPB on our website. So please go into that website. Also, if you would go into, call into the university, you can be plugged into other entities through the Office of Educational Leadership student leadership and involvement. So that is also available. So anyone wanting to find out what's happening at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff for Black History, please feel free to call 575-8000 and ask for the Office of Student Development and Leadership.
Okay. I have a couple of things I want to say before we close out of this segment. The time has changed. In the past, we had an hour, but now we have a half-hour episode. And Randy, you correct me if I'm wrong. We go from 4 to 4:30 at 7 days a week in the afternoon, and in the morning it is 6:30 to 7. 6:30 to 7. It's on 7 days a week, and we appreciate the phone calls that we get pertaining to this initiative. And I also want to go back to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who's the founder of the Black History National Initiative. Yeah. And of course, he is the author of The Miseducation of the Negro.
A classic.
And if you haven't read that book, you need to read The Miseducation of the Negro. Cameron, have you read The Miseducation of the Negro? Oh, good, good. We must get that book and read it. And we're going to discuss further what is meant by the miseducation, but we don't have time in this segment. Randy, I believe time is up, isn't it? Yeah, so thank you for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you're not leaving now, are you?
No.
You